business world just moves so much faster. So I find the pace much more fun to cover. I mean, in some ways, media is a great marketing engine for something else. I think for Newcomer, events have really become that other thing. Stories can come from all sorts of places, and so being really relationship oriented and is key to the business. I feel like covering startups and venture capital is like the best beat in the world. So I feel very fortunate in what I do.
Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. Today on the show, I am so excited to be joined by Eric Newcomer. Eric is the founder and writer behind Newcomer, which is a deeply reported newsletter on the inner workings of the startup industry. He's widely regarded as one of the sharpest independent journalists and observers of power, money, and ambition in tech. He's built Newcomer from a Substack newsletter into a must-read publication with over 100,000 subscribers. I actually think you're over 101,000. I checked today. After spending 6 years at Bloomberg, Eric took the leap in 2020 to build Newcomer full-time, breaking stories that shape how founders, investors, and operators understand the startup world. From leaked slide decks at Coatue and Tiger to deeply reported interviews with top venture capitalists, his work consistently uncovers breaking news and interesting insights. Eric is also the host of the Newcomer Podcast, which launched with a debut episode featuring Reid Hoffman, and he's also the co-creator of major tech events like the Cerebral Valley AI Summit, bringing together CEOs from Stability, Runway, Hugging Face, and leading partners from firms like Sequoia and Greylock. Earlier in his career, Eric was the first employee at The Information, where he broke news including Amazon's acquisition of Twitch. A Harvard graduate with a background in philosophy and a journalist's instinct for truth, Eric has built a platform that founders and investors can't afford to ignore. Let's welcome Eric.
I'm glad I didn't write the bio.
Did you like it?
It was very nice, very flattering. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You can use it.
Nice to hear it from you instead of having
I know.
to say it about myself. It's like, not my words. So very kind of you.
I feel like whenever I do panels these days, they're like, so tell me about yourself. And I'm like, I don't want to have to do that thing. Like, can you just say it? So I'm glad you liked it and you can use it now.
Yeah,
no,
I have it. I'll just steal it. Yeah,
I told Eric before we started, we created our own bio for this one, which we don't usually do. And I'm like, we actually did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it was good.
You're
very
welcome.
Up to date.
I love it. Okay, so we're going to get right into the meat of the interview. We asked this to all our guests. Okay, it's a hard-hitting question right out the gate. Not how most interviewers do it. You guys will come to find out Eric is an expert interviewer, so he probably thinks this is a crazy tactic. But we like to talk about the hard paths here on the podcast, not just the glamorous stuff you hear in the news. So I want to just get right into it. What's been the hardest part of your journey so far? And it can be personal or professional. Take it however you want.
Yeah. I mean, there are hard moments throughout. I think, Newcomer has really gone from being an individual Substack newsletter into more of a company. And I think the hardest part was probably year 2 of the Substack. Year 1, I'd been at Bloomberg. I had these stories that weren't going to work there, that my editors didn't want, that I felt like, if I could just do my own thing, I know they're good stories. Year 2, you're like, I have to do this all over again. I had all these creative ideas. It's like you have this enthusiasm, and then just, as I'm sure you experience, like sustaining being out there is really hard, because coming up with the first burst of like fresh ideas, okay, that was your lifetime of ideas, and now you're in the sustaining mode. And if you want to be good in media, you always sort of have to stay ahead. So I think it's that race of, okay, being alone, doing it again, so then I hired some people, we added events, we sort of, now I'm doing other things in addition to writing, and I have a team supporting me writing their own stories. So I responded to that hardship, but I think it's that second year doing it again, and you're like, oh my God, I have to be as good as the first year.
Yeah, I know that very well. What is the hardest part in that second year? Is it the idea creation, which you're talking about, and like coming up with like what's next? Is it monetization and like figuring out how you're going to make this all work and pay for things? Is it like scaling yourself? Because I mean, you obviously are like the face of this. What was like, if you had to pinpoint the hardest thing, or if there was like a hard moment where you really had a day where you were like, oh my gosh, is this going to work?
I think it's being my own boss. I think when I wasn't my own boss, I had this feeling, shout out to my boss out there. It's like, if only I was managed better, I would really flourish. And then you're like your own boss and you realize it's like, no, these are like my own like personal like foibles, I need to like grow, and I'm just sort of for good and bad, I feel like I like to be a force of like creative inspiration. I don't want like, this is my format. Every week I do this story type. It's like, no, sometimes I do this one, sometimes I do that one. And that novelty can be great on Substack because the big hits tend to get me the most subscribers. And so having a strategy where you're purely, I just weave so that I can get those great hits can be good. But it can also mean that you're sort of like trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. That's sort of like, okay, I have a process, this is what I do, the repeatability. There are lots of successful creators out there who would say you need a format, like not having a format like is, psychologically exhausting. And I think that's what I found. We've introduced, now we have a Friday newsletter that sort of like summarizes what happens in the week. My podcast has a little bit more of a format, but we still have those pieces that are more like, this week we're going to, we have some slides that we published from somebody this week, it's a profile. And so we do have that sort of chaotic variety, and the chaos when you're all by yourself and you don't have that wellspring of the new stories that you were really excited about. That's when you really have to become a little bit more mature and manage yourself. And I think I had to learn that.
Totally. And I think the chaos can be very exciting, but it also can be hard to communicate to people what you do and what you are. Like, it's one thing if you're like the slide deck revealer. And it's another thing if you're like the deep profiler. And it's one thing if you're like the video interviewer. How have you thought about sharing what Newcomer is and what you stand for with this sort of chaotic, like cadence and chaotic type of story?
Right. I think I am very true to Silicon Valley. Like, I really believe in startups and venture capital. I really believe that Silicon Valley, even as it's gotten bigger and bigger, is a network-obsessed place. And I know and cherish and criticize sometimes the people and try to balance that. And so it's really rooted in like the people and what they're interested in. And I think great reporters talk to their sources, get good stories and feed them back. I have this extra loop of my sources are my readers. So I'm talking to my customers all the time. I'm out there. I'm like, what are you interested in? So it's just really rooted in what the community of people I'm writing about and writing for care about, and then sort of reflecting stuff that's novel and interesting to them. So I just think constantly being in touch with that sort of investor in Silicon Valley and having a sense of what's on their mind and what they'd be interested in reading about has really helped me just like stay on the pulse. And that often ends up being my manager more than anything. It's like, where are my readers' heads at? What are they interested in? What are the themes they're following? And what can I get them that would be useful information?
Yeah, it's a nice flywheel. I feel like a lot of media companies, like who they're talking to get their information is not who they're selling to. And that can be a little disjointing because you don't really know who you're writing for. So it's nice that you guys have this like flywheel that really works in tandem.
Exactly.
So I want to talk just briefly about Bloomberg. And you hinted at this earlier on, how a lot of the stories that you wanted to do weren't getting done or weren't going to fit the profile for Bloomberg. I'd love to hear a little bit more about like that 2020 year when you went solo. What was the impetus? What was it about Bloomberg that you couldn't get things done, or that you decided, hey, I want to go do my own thing?
To be clear, I love Bloomberg.
Yes,
I learned a lot there.
Bloomberg's great.
No. I mean, I really did learn. I got a lot of, I was like the intrepid Uber beat reporter. I got, financial scoops. I was sort of Uber's burning a lot of money. That's worrying. But I never went like, oh, they're going to go, bankrupt or whatever. But then everybody would be, all the sort of haters would be going to my stories. I also broke the video of Travis Kalanick arguing with an Uber driver. And so I did a lot
That's iconic.
of. Yeah. People love video as I've learned. So I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But even at Bloomberg, which is, very financially savvy, you're not really writing for Silicon Valley. You still are translating what's going on to everyone else. Like, I covered, this is a really wonky old story, but, Parker Conrad before Rippling had this company Zenefits that blew up. It was a big Andreessen Horowitz investment. It was sort of the early like Uber crisis story. And I remember covering that, and I was like, I don't know, Parker is pretty sympathetic. David Sachs seems like a big meanie, coming for Parker who doesn't really know how to fight this crisis war. And I felt like, the forces of like, I was doing a story for Business Week, and it was just, we're doing the first order story, which is Zenefits is a disaster. And I was already interested in the like, well, there have been, the Wall Street Journal and people have poked at this. I think we should be in some ways writing the response and the corrective to the narrative. And so at Newcomer, I don't have to worry about like, this is the authoritative take for all of society. It's like, I can be responding to, some idea that's out there and saying, well, we need the corrective on that. And, it's more the conversation that insiders would be having about something like Zenefits instead of the this is the one that we have to explain to the world what happened in Zenefits.
I think that's why also having it named Newcomer is so nice, because you kind of feel like this underdog that's like everyone's friend, that's just talking about either like the breaking news or like, hey, everyone has it wrong at these big institutions. We're going to get it right. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Yeah, it's my last name, and so definitely it being my last name made it so easy. There was, you don't have as many like deep brand conversations when you're like, oh, well, it works pretty well. It's funny coming up with events now, and I now appreciate that coming up with good names is actually very challenging, and I am fortunate that on the media company question I had it easy. But yeah, I mean, I'm developing. What is my persona is like a funny question I'm agonizing about right now, because as I'm building out my podcast, there's this like desire to like create a character versus like be authentic. And I think I've always tried to just be authentic and have these real relationships with my readers. And so, yeah, I do want this sort of like friendly, but sometimes people get like punched in the face with a story. And sometimes I don't feel great about it, but it's like, I have that sort of reporter's compunction that like, this is a fair story.
Yeah. This
needs to be said. I mean, I did this story on the startup Bench where the CEO had tweeted.
Bench accounting?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is more recent, but it's just like an example of the CEO tweets like, if the board hadn't pushed me out, like, the company could have been in a great place. And then I did all this reporting about how, well, the board got all these complaints from executives. And it's sort of like, it wasn't this like straightforward picture that was being painted. So I love the sort of like, let me go actually talk to people and see if an oversimplified story is really as clear cut as it's being presented online.
And I think Twitter also tends to like take a side. Like there often isn't a lot of nuance. Like I find everyone sort of can take the side of the Bench CEO or not. And so it's probably nice for you to feel like you can provide like a counter narrative to what everyone has agreed upon and maybe make them think a little differently.
It can be stressful, in some ways it's easier to pick your team. You're like, I believe in capitalism. I believe in Silicon Valley. So I feel like I'm on the team in the sense that I don't have this existential question about like, I believe in like stage financing for startups, but I think things can go wrong and people deserve criticism. And there are firms that, I've had friendly relationships with, like Benchmark Capital, that I did a fairly negative profile of. So it can be, hard to sort of like shed, loyalty. There's no, you have to sort of follow the facts. And so it's a tough position, but that's what independence is. And I think that's what my readers know they're getting from me, even when it's sort of a painful process to be, sometimes, this firm's doing well. And so, write positively about them, and sometimes they're not, and you write negatively. And that's, how I do it.
How the cookie crumbles. It sounds tough. I will say, like, being both friends and critics with a lot of these folks. And if you find out, let's say you are really good friends with a GP at Benchmark, but then you find out that they've done this founder really dirty, as a hypothetical. How do you think about towing that line and like the longevity of the relationship versus sharing that news? Like, I feel like I don't envy the position of the journalists who are actually friends with these people. Now, maybe you call it work friends, but what's your take there? And like, how do you balance when to break the story versus preserve the friendship, wait it out, give them a heads up, all that? I know it's not easy and probably case by case, but curious your take.
I'm trying to remember the character's name in The Wire, the guy who robs drug dealers. I think he has like
I didn't see The Wire. I can't help you. I'm sorry.
It's all right. But anyway, he says it's all in the game. It's sort of, I think I get along with, sources and have good relationships with them who can sort of understand you have the goods on this, like that's fair, like I can take the criticism. So I think firms that can sort of accept that, if this is the fact pattern, I can see why you're writing that, and like maybe, we don't talk for 6 months and then someday we find a reason to start texting again. So yeah, I think it's all in the game. It's like, and I don't, it's not a game in that I take people's reputations very seriously. I care about like the facts, but there is a certain level of the people I can have long lasting relationships with do sort of understand what a fair story is. And it's like, okay, that's a fair, I could see why somebody would have that perspective. And, there is opinion in my stories too. So certainly people are entitled to be upset about my opinions, but people with thick skin, I get along with them a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, they respect you're in the game and you're hustling and doing what you have to do too. So they try not to take it so personally. For some reason, I'm thinking of the analogy of like being like a professional sports player. Like you can be like neck and neck in like the championship, and you can like hate them in the moment and be like, you suck and you're going down. But at the end of the day, you go to bed and be like, fair game, like the best player won there. And like, I respect that.
Are you watching Heated Rivalry?
I did watch Heated Rivalry.
That's like the plot.
I know that is very much the
plot. I know that
plot.
happens elsewhere, but I just watched it, so
it's so good.
Yeah, it's
well,
really
also the
good.
Olympics are coming up, so I think I'm getting in my like sports mood. But I think of it kind of like that, where you can get so heated in the moment, have a heated rivalry, if you will. But then at the end of the day, you respect people for speaking truth to fact and sharing things out with the world.
Totally.
Cool. I wanted to talk briefly about your stint at The Information. So you were a first employee there. Talk to me about how you got that gig, also at like a seemingly quite young age that maybe you knew at the time it was going to be what it is now. Maybe you didn't. Talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. I had sort of climbed the newspaper ladder, perhaps one of the last people to do the sort of, I'm going to get in traditional media thing. I'd interned at my hometown newspaper, the Macon Telegraph, for 2 summers, then the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale, the Tampa Bay Times in St. Petersburg, Tampa, and then the New York Times after my senior year of college.
That's like the perfect ladder.
Yeah, exactly. Climbing up the Southern
sense.
Tampa Bay Times, very well respected newspaper among newspaper insiders. So yeah, I was climbing that career, and then I didn't get the New York Times job. I mean, most interns didn't. I actually hiked the Appalachian Trail for a month to just sort of reset, which was a lot of fun.
Whoa.
And it was always the goal, just a month, but it was nice to just sort of disconnect. And then I got a job covering D.C. City Hall for the Washington Examiner. The Examiner has become more conservative. It was already conservative, but the local section was like fairly straight shooting. And, I'm, if you read my Substack, a liberal, but it was interesting to be in the beast. And, so the local stories would be very like budget conscious and pro suburban driver, but otherwise it was fairly straight news. They killed that local newspaper effort 6 months into my job, but they actually gave us a fair bit of warning. So then I had a while to sort of like cast about what I was going to do next. I actually accepted a job at the Philadelphia Inquirer, which again was a good newspaper, but dying at the time and in a huge management fight. And Jessica Lesson, I don't remember the exact intro. I was on the Harvard Crimson. She had been on the Harvard Crimson, not same overlap, but I'd hit up that network to get advice from every which way. And so I think from that, oh my God, where should I go? She was starting this Silicon Valley publication, and it was just sort of move to San Francisco, join this publication that didn't even have a name. It was like, I was writing for JessicaLesson.com when I started.
Whoa.
And I'd be like, I'm Eric Newcomer, writing for former Wall Street Journal reporter Jessica Lesson, who had just changed her last name too. So it was the longest, explanation of what we were doing. But yeah, I mean, I learned a ton from her. It was very early. And yeah, I was just sort of the young reporter who was willing to move to San Francisco, and definitely a great education.
What gave you the confidence to go from like trying for the New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, all names that we all know, even if we're not in media, to go try this like very unproven thing? Had you kind of caught the startup bug? Were you excited about Silicon Valley or no? Because you tell me DC City Hall, you're telling me like Florida. I'm not getting startup.
I know. I was sort of blind to it. I mean, I think I chase exciting things. It was more exciting. I think she was going to pay me more, so I don't think it was hard on that front. I think moving to San Francisco, she was well respected. Just seemed exciting. I think the DC Examiner thing, like Washington Examiner, disillusioned me a little bit. That like, oh man, you're really gonna feel, you get laid off. You're like, oh, the traditional media is really taking a hit. It's funny in retrospect that I was pretty blind to the startup thing. Certainly, people were creating startups out of Harvard, but I was very journalism oriented. You can tell a story in, retrospect. Both my grandfathers had small businesses. One of them, like literally in York, Pennsylvania, had a paper wholesale redistributor, like in the office in Scranton. So, I had entrepreneurial,
That's like the perfect intersection of your interests.
What
I mean? Paper and startups.
So anyway, so it's like, okay, but no, I just sort of fell in love with Silicon Valley, being in San Francisco writing for The Information and then Bloomberg, and just really as a coverage area started to believe and really believe now that the business world just moves so much faster. Like a political story can feel so incremental. There's a lot of hype about legislation that never comes. And whereas in the business world, I think you're tracking companies that, really take off in the span of a couple years. So I find the pace of things happening in Silicon Valley much more fun to cover.
Totally. I also feel like it's a pretty small world. Like, I think that's one thing that I hear a lot of people don't understand. They think because these companies feel larger than life and these investors feel larger than life that, oh my gosh, like how did they find that deal? And how did they know that one was leaving to start the thing? And when you're actually in it, and you can attest to this too, I'm sure, like it's kind of like the same 300 people that are like running the show. And so I think there's also something to be said that it's actually a small community. And so yes, the pace is fast, but I'm sure you probably like that piece too, because you come from sort of a smaller community.
Yeah, I agree with you on the thesis. There's a small community.
Yeah.
I was eager to escape my small community and
okay,
not
so
live
then,
in
but
New
you're
York
still
City.
in one.
But yeah, covering tech world, I agree. It's totally a very small world.
Totally. On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. RocketReach is the leading sales and lead intelligence solution trusted by sales, marketing, recruiting, and business development teams to grow their businesses. Whether you're looking for a developer halfway around the world, a C-level executive in New York, or a potential investor in Silicon Valley, we connect you directly. With RocketReach, you can easily access the most comprehensive, accurate compilation of emails and phone numbers on Earth. That puts you in front of the right people faster and backs you up with a database that reaches across industries, markets, and titles, using AI to continually improve the quality of your contacts. With RocketReach, you can reach anyone so you can reach higher. Many of you know I love cold outreach. It's been the root of many of my success so far, and this is the tool that I've used the whole time. Trailblazer listeners get 15% off any plan at rocketreach.co/trailblazers. That's rocketreach.co/trailblazers. And early on at The Information, how much visibility did you have on like how to monetize an up and coming media business? Because now you're obviously in the seat of, I run my own business, you had to hire your first employee. Was that training at The Information helpful there? Or do you feel like you were pretty much this like young guy that was going around trying to do stories and you didn't necessarily see that side of like the business, like the ops side?
No, I saw like, Jessica would have us email people to subscribe. And so I was very aware of like what the story's moving subscriptions. She's, a true believer on paid subscriptions. I like it, but events are a huge revenue stream and always, I don't know. People don't like to pay for media. I don't know. But, we have a substantial, we have like 2,500 paid subscribers, but who I'm very appreciative and get the full service. But anyway, yeah, I think I saw you can do it. You can go from nothing and people will pay attention to you, and like, you just seeing that inception gives you the confidence that like, oh, I can do that as well. So I think that helped definitely. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about monetization now. So you kind of hinted at some things. Paid subscribers. You have your big 101,000 subscriber newsletter. That's the free.
Yeah, that's the top of funnel.
Top of funnel. Then you have your 2,500 paid. Then you have a podcast and you have events. Talk to me about how you think about monetization as a media business. Like, where do you feel like people are not thinking about monetization and they should? And where are people like obsessing over monetization? Maybe it's paid and they shouldn't. But I'd love to get your take on like what's worked for you guys and what you're leaning into these days.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, media is a great marketing engine for something else. I think Mr. Beast has his chocolate bars, and I think for Newcomer, events have really become that other thing. I mean, I'm very proud that event production has really become a core competency of Newcomer. I think there are lots of like people in media who would sort of outsource it or really not learn the muscle, but we became, we have our whole sort of group of people that put together our events and a sensibility and what makes our events different. But just having the newsletter, which can make an event a thing, we can write about it. You were there. That's what a lot of people who are speaking want. So we get really great speakers because this is really going to reach people. And then we do a lot of hard work because of my network of getting great people in the audience. The events, I just feel like for a sponsor, they really understand what they're getting. For attendees, you're going somewhere. So yeah, the events, we stumbled backwards into them. Like the origin of the events was literally, I'm in New York. I was going to my bachelor party in California. My friends were like, you should expense the flight. Let's do like a half day event. They had an office in Hayes Valley. Their employees didn't come in to work on Thursday. It's like, let's see. And I started texting people and partners like Benchmark and Kleiner Perkins and Ahmad Mustaq, who is the CEO of Stability and very controversial,
Extremely controversial.
Exactly. All said they would speak within like 40 minutes. So it was like, oh man, like this is gonna be easy. And so then it became a whole day event. Like Samsung was a sponsor. I was shushing like Cotu partners. Somebody at one of the major public investors told me they put $1 billion into NVIDIA after that event. Like that was 2023. So we were like right place, right time, right energy. Danielle at Anthropic spoke. Ali Goetze at Databricks met.
You got all the heavy hitters.
Yeah, he met Naveen Rao, who ran Mosaic ML and acquired that company soon afterwards for like $1.3 billion. So that event was like amazing. And that was just like leaning into what was working. And then we started doing the Cerebral Valley AI Summit twice a year after that. Oracle has been a consistent sponsor. Samsung has always been a great sponsor. Now we have like up and coming neo clouds like Iron around it. And we do, a dinner with like Kleiner Perkins. So that's been a lot of fun. So events are definitely the majority of our revenue and a huge part of like the growth strategy. I want to keep growing paid subscriptions, and I think like great writing will always be core to our identity. And then podcasting, honestly, is the weakest link on the stool at the moment. Like we
can chat.
Yeah, I take your advice.
Thoughts,
yeah. I just did an interview with Tony Fadell that's doing pretty well.
Yep.
So I'm happy about that. We literally got Reid Hoffman talking about Jeffrey Epstein on the podcast, but I feel like we didn't shout about that enough. Anyway,
you gotta shout about that like today.
I know. I just tweeted a Jeffrey Epstein only clip, so I'm trying to do better. But I think to me the podcast, first of all, given I host events, seems natural. Like we post some of the event videos, but then I think it could be top of funnel. It's
like the in between. When you have the events, it's sort of your way to sort of like drip people and remind them that you're around in between those giant events.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. I have a bunch of thoughts. I guess my first is events are notorious for being like the break even, way to make money. They cost a lot to do. You can also make a lot. So like, is there any secret tip or trick you have for folks that like think events could be a great fit for them? Maybe they also have their own distribution. Maybe they have a great network, but they don't want it to be like a break even line item for them. Any tips or tricks that you guys have found to like make money on them, not just generate a lot and cost a lot?
Overall, I feel like covering startups and venture capital is like the best beat in the world. So I feel very fortunate in what I do. It is at once a culturally interesting story and, an industry with a lot of money to spend. So it's like I could be in oil and gas. It would be no fun to write about, but maybe there'd be money, or you could write about Washington, not as much money necessarily. Anyway, so I'm coming in from a position of, privilege in terms of what I write about, and then AI even more so. I think, sponsors are a customer in events. So I think you have to really know what the story is for them. And for some of them, it's like they want to be an essential brand in AI, and we're getting the core AI startups together. And in particular, we're getting AI companies that are building out infrastructure, so they want to spend money on infrastructure. And so I think knowing like what your sponsor is getting, like why are they spending all that money besides just like amorphously supporting what you're trying to do is helpful. And then I think, getting the right people there, really convening, having the results. But it's in some ways we got lucky being on this AI wave. We did a health focused event that had an AI sort of longevity Silicon Valley flair to it, but we've shown that we can have successful events outside of just Cerebral Valley. And I want to keep executing on this strategy of sort of focused events, almost like breaking out each partner at a venture capital firm and say, okay, we're not going to invite the same people to every event. maybe your defense tech partner comes, maybe, you're a crypto, I'm not as excited, cyber.
Yeah, like, let me take that back. I think sector specificity is also great for sponsors because they really know what they're getting out of it, and they're more excited. And then in terms of, that's very helpful. In terms of paid versus free, what's the value prop there? So like if someone's listening and they're one of your free subscribers, but maybe they want to be paid, what's the offering there, and what's your advice for someone who maybe has a big free newsletter right now and is thinking about turning on paid?
On Substack, we just believe in the paywall. I mean, we paywall almost everything, but some stories, if it's just really broad, we'll just paywall maybe the very end, or even have sort of a secondary section that we're paywalling. I make exceptions. Like, I didn't paywall something last week that was political because it was sort of like an essay, and I wanted it out there. But for the most part, we paywall somewhere so that somebody is always faced with this decision of, like, if you really want everything, you need to pay. And, some of these are stories where they have like an ending. I think our secret to converting people, which I've said, but is just people want like a database, or they want like a spreadsheet, or they want documents. I think people really want to feel like there is this thing behind the paywall that I'm getting. I think that's often the best converter. Sometimes it's just like, Madeline Renbarger, who writes for me, did a story about AI roll-ups, and we just had a list of like, here are all the firms doing it, here are the key people, here's the strategy. And so then if you're in the industry and you want the list, and you can, you're like, oh, I've been reading this, like, here, I want to know this, then they subscribe. And so I think having narrative above the paywall, and then here's sort of a useful database you can use behind the paywall is a great strategy.
Yeah, totally. I think it helps people rationalize it in their head too, that they're paying for something versus just like words on a paper. It's like, okay, now I have something in my downloads, so that was like worth the cost.
Exactly.
Awesome. One thing I wanted to talk to you about too. So, I know you have some bias in this conversation, so I'm just going to acknowledge that up front, because you are a media organization. There is a huge movement now to go direct. And actually, speaking of Parker from earlier, who was Zenefits, now Rippling, I would say he's like a big proponent of and a person who does go direct with his comms. What that means, for those of you who don't know, is, founders who don't just go directly to media and have them share updates, but they themselves go directly through social channels, and they sort of control the narrative. What's your take on the going direct movement? Do you think it's a fad? Do you think it's longer term? And what's your advice for a founder who is maybe thinking about building out their own distribution versus saying, I'm good. Whenever I have a big launch, I'll just like text Eric and he'll do it.
Please build your own distribution, because I don't even cover, there's so many announcements that we get pitched on that we don't even write about. So definitely good to have your own distribution channels. I mean, in some ways I've benefited from Go Direct in that, Go Direct is often just meant like avoid very hostile media and go to channels that are like friendlier. I'm somewhere in between in that I'm not like, I don't believe in this capitalism thing. So when I launched Newcomer, I said I wanted some contrarian optimism because, me always sort of like going the opposite direction. When I started covering Silicon Valley, there were all these tech bloggers. It was very positive. By the time I was ready to start Newcomer, I'm like, man, it's really negative. Like, I should be more upbeat. So in some ways I was aligned with the Go Direct sense that, man, mainstream media has gotten really hostile to the technology industry and only wants to talk about Facebook and how it, stole the election or whatever, and that's really messed everything up. So I'm sympathetic with that ebb and flow. I mean, my overall view is, Lulu Cheng Maservi, who's like the godmother of Go Direct, who I really respect, she gets her companies into the New York Times. Like, everybody wants to be in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, if they can get it. You just need to have other plans, and you don't want to feel totally dependent on them. And obviously, it's good to be in a strong position if you need to fight back. So I think it's an all of the above strategy, and the moods change. And I think right now, everybody's shouting about themselves. And so the more everybody's like, okay, listen to my story, you need gatekeepers and independent voices who say, this is interesting, this is boring, and that's sort of the role I play. And I think that's always going to be something that's useful, where someone who's on the side of the reader and the listener, and so says, okay, you're getting flooded with stuff. What should you actually pay attention to? So I think, media can get defensive. It's not an easy business. It's, you probably make more money somewhere else. You're supposed to get paid in, vanity. And so it's hard, I think, in a period where like everybody sort of hated the media for a little bit in Silicon Valley. It's like, man, I'm doing this because it's sort of, wrap myself in glory a little bit maybe. And then it's like everybody hates you. But, these things ebb and flow. And I think there's always a role for a neutral party that's sort of fair and entertaining and can sort of help pick what's worth paying attention to.
Totally. It sounds like both are important. You need to have the distribution. You need to have these parties like yourself. And I think as there's more AI slop out there, you do want someone like you to be like, okay, of these, like, not just 10 announcements this week, but 100 announcements.
It's becoming easier and easier.
Easier and easier to sort of like launch things all the time. How do you feel about a founder that does not have distribution? Do you find that you are less excited to write about it, or is it still just about the caliber of the story? Like when you're thinking about your own business, you want to write great stories. That's most important. But like a secondary or tertiary metric is like you want to grow your own subscriber following.
Yeah,
What's your take on it?
I don't look at their social followings at all. Maybe I'm just like old school or like not a good creator. But in that sense, I'm just much more of like a snob. I'm like, who's recommending you? Like, who believes in this? Like, who are the firms? Like, what's the traction? So I'm much more network sensitive than, and in fact, in some ways, I'd rather somebody with like a total shadow presence going from nothing to, they're just like, this is really
exciting.
Cool,
Yeah.
So I'm not looking, like someone who has a big platform is already shouting about themselves a lot. They can be fun to have on sometimes, but I'm not really prioritizing that.
Yeah. I actually didn't even think about it that way, but I guess in some ways, you actually have like a bigger and more exciting scoop if someone is like a nobody and then they're like doing a crazy $100 million ARR or whatever, and you're like, we found it first.
Right.
Super interesting. Okay, cool. One final question for you, and then we'll get into our lightning round. What do you think is the biggest misconception between the venture startups tech world and the media world? You straddle both. You see it well. You're moderating panels all the time. You're writing about this stuff all the time. Is there one giant misconception that one side has about the other that you want to squash right here, right now?
I just think anytime two cultures collide, they can both be speaking somewhat rationally and really drive each other insane. For Silicon Valley, most startups don't need to succeed. And you sort of, like, take Y Combinator, right? An institution I really respect. They treat every startup like it will be huge, that it could be huge. And in some ways, like, one of the pieces of advice they give their founders is like sort of talk like you're a year ahead of what you are. It's like you sort of want to sort of be telling the story a little bit ahead of where you are, whereas reporters really want people to be very accurate about where they are and not to be overselling things. And why can't you just be reasonable? And so I just think it's inevitable that there's a culture clash, and that one is trying to keep you rooted in today and what you can do, and the other is saying, well, growth curves are the most powerful thing in the world. And if we continue on it, then you should really appreciate that this is going to be enormous. And yeah, I mean, I guess journalists could be slightly better at being like understanding this, how, I remember when Uber at 3 billion was insane. Like we can really, even among venture capitalists, underestimate, the TAM and total addressable market and how big these things can get. And so reporters could be a little bit better at forecasting. But, I think the tech world could be better at understanding when dealing with the media that being really buttoned up about like the facts is how you earn a reporter's respect.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I mean, I'm even thinking now about how I find the people that are most successful with fundraising are more in the YC approach. But a lot of people, because maybe they haven't pitched before, they read all the media articles that you put out and other people put out. So they think they need to be buttoned up about the numbers. And I actually find that clash you're talking about is also the clash I see with folks who raise well and don't raise well, because they're maybe like reading the media stuff, but they're not in the rooms with the fundraisers.
Yeah. Which it's a little insane to me that VCs seem to want to be sort of deceived a little bit, but
I know.
Yeah, I mean, you want somebody who's really telling the story about the future and really believes it, and often those are the wild ideas that change the world and become frauds.
Yeah, also do not change the world.
Right.
Okay, we'll get to lightning in a second. I did want to make sure I asked you about the Travis Kalanick Uber story.
Sure. So
you mentioned it earlier. You were the one to leak that video. Could you tell me a little bit about how you found that video, how you got it out, and sort of a little bit more behind there?
Yeah, so it's a video of Travis Kalanick in the back of an Uber with these two women seemingly like going to a club or something. And then at the end, as he's getting out, the Uber driver like bravely confronts him and says, you basically like screwed me over. But Uber had like lease these vehicles out. And so he'd invested in a vehicle that then Uber lowered the standards for the vehicles you needed. And so then he was sort of screwed. Anyway, that confrontation and his like bravery, I think, was one of the things that really hurt Travis's reputation while there was sort of this effort to oust him as CEO. The story of getting the video, the driver is sort of like a wild character, and his name is Fawzi Kamel, and he like emailed me. I think he emailed a bunch of reporters. It was very unhinged, and I just replied like, "Send me the video," and he sent it, and he said, "Oh, I'll send it to you, but you have to get my permission to run it." I said, "Okay," and so then he sent it, and then I was like, "Oh wow, you know, this video is really interesting." And so then like Bloomberg was becoming more and more aware that I had this like great video, and meanwhile I'm like, I have to get the driver to agree that it's okay to run it. And so I had the whole story ready, and eventually he agrees. He's still driving for Uber. He's literally driving for Uber, and I'm trying to catch him between shifts to like talk about this like seismic thing. So I think it was just, having, being out there as an obvious like Uber reporter that he would email, being, very attentive to my inbox, and then willing to hear out a crazy person or someone who writes in an unhinged way. And I don't want to call him crazy, but
unhinged is a great word. Yeah. That's a safe word. Yeah.
And listen to him and then watch the video and go back and forth with him. And at one point he had I had a nice relationship with him. One time he had my Showtime account or whatever to watch the Uber show when it came out. And like, I think, stories can come from all sorts of places. And so being really relationship oriented and like, is key to the business.
And also it sounds like really making it known that you were reporting on Uber a lot.
Yeah.
So that was like top
just
of mind.
Owning an area. I mean, I'd written a ton, and I'd written about drivers sleeping in their cars, and I'd written about these leases. I don't know exactly what stories he saw or how he got my email address, but certainly I was writing about topics that he would have cared about.
That's wild. And the ripple effects that story had. I mean, I know as someone who was just a consumer, saw that video and was like, I'm only using Lyft from here on out. And things have changed.
Right.
But it was a very powerful story. And it's crazy that when media goes viral, how much it can really change everything.
What's crazy to me to be a person mostly in prose, and one of the most effective stories I've ever had was a video. I mean, people love...
You didn't write it at all. You just were the messenger.
It's a beautiful, write-up alongside it, but people like to be able to see it themselves. Yeah, and that's just the reality. People like that. And that, the culture has only gotten more that way, where we really... obviously these terrible shootings, people want the ones that they can see are the ones that really go crazy.
The scary thing though is with AI, we're just not sure what's real and what's not. And that's a whole other discussion. But that Travis video, if that had come out today, a lot of people would probably brush it off as totally AI.
Right. Which could be good for big media organizations again, where it's like you need
credibility,
sort of validator. Yeah.
So interesting. The future of media. Fun stuff. If you work in venture or startups, you know the constant juggling act. Replying to messages from co-investors, founders, LPs, customers, and teammates all hitting your personal number. I know this very well. We all hand out our cell, which means your EA can't help an iMessage, and important threads get buried. That's why I'm very excited about Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's built for founders and investors like us who want communication that feels personal but stays organized. Quo gives you a dedicated business line on your existing cell phone. And if you already have a business number, you can bring it with you for free. Plus, you'll get call summaries, transcripts, and an AI voice agent called Sona that can answer and schedule when you're offline. We're actually cooking up something fun with the Quo team right now and using that same voice AI tech in a new way for our firm. More soon, but it's a great reminder that you can use voice AI to stay top of mind of your customers' needs. Quo is trusted by over 90,000 businesses and rated #1 on G2 for customer satisfaction. You can get 20% off your first 3 months at quo.com/trailblazers. That's quo.com/trailblazers. So I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, and my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is online payroll and benefit software specifically built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. For smaller startups in particular, I have found that it's the most affordable and easy to set up option, and it's the one that we recommend to all of our startups at our firm. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/trailblazers. Okay, let's get into the lightning round. Just answer whatever comes to mind first, okay? Book in hand or podcast in ears?
Miracle Children by Katie Benner is a book about, just how this school got all these minority children into the Ivy League based on a bunch of lies and sort of interrogating the admissions process. Just recently came out.
And have you read it yet?
Yeah, it's great.
You read it? Yeah. Okay, I love it. We got to rec with it,
She was on my podcast. She's a good friend.
Okay, and shout out to your podcast. You got to listen to the episode.
Exactly, the Newcomer Podcast.
Exactly. Morning person or night owl?
Night,
okay. Well, we just talked about this. You're a new father. How is that working with your schedule?
Yeah. Now I wake up. Our baby is sleeping through the night, which I'm almost at 4 months. I don't want to brag too loudly because I feel bad for.
You don't want to jinx it.
Well, that too. But she'll go to bed, 10ish, and then she'll start babbling at like 7:15, and then at 7:30, she's not even screaming. We just get up, and I'm like, "Good morning," and then she figures out she's hungry by the time we're changing her diaper, and then my wife breastfeeds her, and so. Yeah, I wake up now at 7:30, which is for a work from home entrepreneur, I was like, it is early for me, but I'm still, we need to be better about just going to sleep early because we're still holding on to that. We're night people.
But the 10 to 7:15 is like the dream sleep schedule, like even for someone like me with no children. So you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we can't complain on that. It's the not having childcare during the day while we're both trying to work. That's
difficult.
Hard.
That's tough. Cooking dinner or ordering in?
Ordering in.
Any favorites?
Ordering in. What's our favorite? Oh man.
Or even like a type of cuisine too.
Oh yeah. I mean like Indian food.
Oh, same.
One of the now I'm butchering this. There's a big nice like Indian chain.
I only know like the one-offs. Like I went to Sema recently.
Oh yeah, that
Have you been?
That group. I'm forgetting what the restaurant.
Oh yeah, I'm forgetting the
They
group.
have one in Park Slope.
Okay.
That does delivery, and so they have this chili chicken that's so spicy that I always like, oh, why do we order this? But then we get it, and it has such a distinct flavor that I'm like addicted, and it causes me great pain. So I'll try to remember.
Like a lot of things in life, there's a bit of good and a little bit of bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, VC or bootstrapping?
Well, I bootstrap my own business, right? All of Newcomer has been funded off cash flows, so I'm brag about, if you come to me with a bootstrap pitch, it's going to be hard to get me to pay attention. I, write about funding rounds, but for my own business, I'm bootstrapped. So I guess on this, I am a hypocrite.
Yeah, you straddle both worlds. Networking dinner or big conference?
Networking dinner.
Oh, as the person that throws big conferences.
But ours are, they're like 200 people. They're
so
pretty
maybe they're
intimate.
medium conference. Yeah.
I'm not like go to sprawling, events anymore.
Yeah, totally. Curated. That's the important thing. Hire slow or fire fast?
Oh, somebody else needs to teach me this lesson. I think when it's your own money, you're a little more cautious. That's the argument against bootstrapping.
Yeah.
I don't have great advice. I feel like I'm learning this. I think.
What would your answer be as of today?
Today, I think I think my answer today would be hire faster, just because it's like.
Well, it's hire slow or fire fast. Those are the two options.
So
do you want to take your time,
yeah,
or do you want to get
I
them
guess
out quickly?
fire fast, even though it's cruel to say.
Yeah.
Though I have been amazed running a business how much people learn. Like I think I underestimated how much people really learn a lot working for you, and there's value in just like getting people on the team, having them learn from you, learn how the business operates, and so I don't want to fire anybody, but you have to be willing to.
Yeah, and a lot of people come on here too and talk about how when you have one bad egg, it sort of reeks into other parts of the organization, and you're too small of an org to not have everyone be on their A game. Okay, 10 small wins or one big moonshot?
I am running the 10 small wins strategy. I'm very envious of one big moonshot. Like I think running median events, you're like, these are hard businesses. You have to keep doing the thing. You can see why like a great software, human light business that sort of you have the product, maybe you build the product, but the product you have keeps delivering itself. I'm envious of those companies, but I am running the 10, do more events, scale by doing more things strategy.
I love it. Yeah, that's we're speaking your language with that slow compounding, but it's working, right? It's durable.
I think we've surfaced a real contradiction in that I write about one kind of business, I run another, and so it's funny when asked to give advice. It's like I side with the VCs for that strategy, but for whatever reason,
I do not do it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's kind of nice though. I feel like you're a good person to ask these things too. Then, being early or being right?
Being right. I mean, I'm a facts person.
Mm-hmm. Like a true reporter would say. Never post on social media again, or never fundraise another dollar again.
Well, I haven't fundraised anything, so that's easy.
So maybe that answers.
But social media, in some ways, it'd be nice to be able to give it up, But I'm addicted to Twitter.
Yeah, I get it. We all are, unfortunately. AI overhyped or underhyped?
Underhyped.
Okay, tell me more.
I just think, I agree with the VC line that if we were to stop all development today and just build businesses around what AI is already capable of, there's lots of value to be extracted. And people like Dario Amodi at Anthropic seem very confident that we're going to continue to see these models improve. I think the strength of what coders have been able to achieve, their people really get it, are early adopters. I think the rest of us are going to start to get access to some of those capabilities and domains outside of coding. And so, just this OpenClaw or whatever.
This weekend, Claudebot.
Yeah. It's been like 5 different names. Moltbook at one point. I think that's
Moltbook is the official.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's fascinating. It's all these AI agents are talking to each other. And now it's not totally clear like how much their humans have sort of put them up to having, their own particular agendas, but it's pretty fascinating, and I think there's a lot that's going to happen.
Totally. I think they did like a study this past weekend that like a lot of them are just like sending people to like crypto scams or something.
Sure.
And a lot of them are like, actually just like humans trying to sell their business. So, there's a little bit of that. But I think eventually the fact that we all believed it also means that like it's on the horizon,
I mean, we consult OpenAI, ChatGPT for like all things childcare. Like it is just like a huge part of my life. And I think it's only going to become more and more present.
Totally. It's just going to be fun to see which one wins. Yeah. Eric, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell everyone where they can learn more about you and Newcomer and all the things?
Yeah, this was a blast. Go to newcomer.co. That's the Substack. We end up, posting the YouTube links. We now have a pretty robust YouTube channel, the Newcomer Podcast. And then I host the Cerebral Valley AI Summit, which is, you can apply, but it's fundamentally invite only. So start on the Substack and YouTube, get in our world, and
you can work your way up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go to
build
CVAI.
a company. Yeah, exactly.
I can see it right here. That's what it is.
We have cerebralvalley.com. So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think we had to pay up. They really tried to.
Yeah, Cerebral Valley feels very valued, to say the least. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact, and that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute. From closing 6-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.